We're going to start tonight with a warning from Bellwether Walmart. It says they're facing a sluggish start to the year because higher payroll taxes and higher gas prices are weighing on sales. Here's what one Walmart executive said in an email to his colleagues. In case you haven't seen a sales report these days, February month-to-date sales are a total disaster. The worst start to a month I have seen in my roughly 7 years with the company. Now, we all know that when Walmart gets hammered, it's not good for everyone else. So today we have a business executive money power panel to get to the real story's bottom of all this. Tom Stenberg is the co-founder and former CEO of Staples. Catherine Monson is CEO of FASTSIGNS, and Clint Greenleaf is founder and CEO of Greenleaf Book Group. And want to welcome you all to Money. Let's talk about the payroll tax increase. And let me start with Tom first. I mean, clearly that is having an impact. They said it was just a small increase, but even that small increase is hurting average Americans.
Well, remember, it's not just the payroll tax increase. Overall tax rates are going up on a good portion of the middle class who works for small business, who gets taxed at the sub-S rate. You've got the Obamacare taxes kicking in, and you've got worries about how Obamacare overall is going to affect your health care costs and what your employer is going to do for you. And when you create that kind of worry and uncertainty, people each and every time in my long years in retailing cut back.
Well, let me go to Catherine. Your employees, are you seeing them pull back? Are they complaining about the less money they take home in their paycheck because of these tax increases?
Well, certainly taking 2% off of anybody's paycheck is going to have some effect on them, and there's no doubt that rising gas prices are having an effect as well. But at FASTSIGNS, we're not going to pull back, because what we do is we help local businesses generate new customers and sell more to existing customers. So our franchisees around the country are getting ready to help their local business owners drive new traffic and get new business.
Are you seeing, though, those local business owners who you do business with, are they very concerned the way Walmart's concerned? I mean, the word that executive used was disaster.
Well, I'll tell you, our January sales at FASTSIGNS were up 11.4% over a strong January last year. So we're not actually seeing that effect yet. And as we look at our preliminary February numbers, they're strong as well. But as any good CEO, I'm concerned about the macroeconomic situation and am, watching and seeing what we can do to support our franchisees if we do get into that horrible double dip thing that we're trying to avoid.
Well, Clint, let me go to you at this point. A further quote from that email that was leaked, several emails actually from Walmart. At the end of one of them, they actually say, where are all the customers and where's their money? I mean, this is a valid question. Are you seeing this among your clients and among your customers?
Thank God we haven't seen it yet, but I can tell you, Adam, if Walmart's going to feel it, we're all going to feel this. They're a great bellwether for us, but if they're starting to see this on the horizon, we should all be very frightened about that.
Well, let me ask you about this. If I'm a business owner and I'm worried about demand and I see consumers not spending money, I may not want to expand right now. And we're hearing that loans from banks are actually up. They were up in the fourth quarter. SNL Financial actually put out some statistics where they talked about $1.45 trillion in business loans on the books in the third quarter, and loans in the fourth quarter up 4.4%. You think businesses might hold back? Are they having trouble getting loans? Are they going to be more discouraged by this lack of demand by consumers who have less money?
I'm kind of flummoxed by the fact that banks are giving money right now. It doesn't make any sense to me why they would. So if you're a small business and someone's offering you money right now at low rates, I say take it, because you're not going to be able to get it much longer. I think this is going to change very quickly, and we're going to start seeing rates skyrocket up.
Tom, I want to ask you about rates skyrocketing up, because I can recall hearing over and over again from small business owners that they couldn't get loans. Now there have been some articles in different papers that they're getting so many offers for loans that people are worried that perhaps the qualifications for a loan are being overlooked. Is this a danger that we face?
Well, I think you have to really segment what you're talking about. When you're talking about large, profitable enterprises, there's a lot more loan availability there today, and the market's becoming quite competitive. For smaller businesses, particularly those still on the cusp of profitability, and we have some portfolio companies at the Highland Consumer Fund that fit into that bill, it's still challenging to get loans. It's more accessible than it was a year or two ago, but it's still much more challenging than it has been over long periods of time.
Would you agree with
and
Clint?
And that is a problem.
Well, let me ask you, would you agree with Clint that now's the time to strike if you're a small business? Get that loan while the getting's good and interest rates are low?
In general, we tell our companies, and I learned this at Staples and other companies I was involved with, raise money when you don't need it. Because when you do need it, it's when you can't get it.
But what if you're not? Well, let me go back to Catherine. Why would you raise money if you don't need it? If demand right now, I realize your clients, that demand is good. But look, Walmart's demand, they're talking about demand, not destruction, but people pulling back. Why would you want to risk having debt at a time when markets may not be growing?
Well, the interest rates being offered now on debt are considerably low if you look at the historical perspective. And I also think that in weak economies or sometimes down economies, that's the time to strike, to advertise, to build your brand, and to get market share from your competitors. So while I might be concerned about the macroeconomics, I also think it might be a great opportunity for us to grow market share.
So let me ask you, Clint. Is this an anomaly, what we saw out of Walmart, or do you think we're going to see a pullback across all kinds of retail outlets as well as into the next quarters, people not spending money because of the tax hikes?
I think it's highly likely that we're going to see this continue to get worse before it gets better. As long as there's this war on business, a war on the taxpayer, we're going to have some serious troubles before it finally gets fixed.
I want to turn attention to something that's gotten a lot of headlines regarding the U.S. worker, the most productive worker throughout the world. According to the labor statistics, Bureau of Labor Statistics, rather, average American works roughly 34.4 hours. A lot of us work more than that. There was a comment from a CEO recently about doing business in France, and he was very, well, he pointed out that French unions make it very difficult. But we actually asked a question and found out that in France, the average employee is working about 37.5 hours. Take it for what it's worth. The source of that was the labor force survey. But at the end of the day, the American worker is very efficient, but is getting squeezed. I mean, Tom, what does the American worker do? $20 more a week for gas, 2% off the paycheck in taxes. Where do you cut? Because that's what's happening.
Well, I want to come back to something that you showed on your screen, which I know is per se wrong. In France, as a matter of fact, in law, if your employee works more than 35 hours a week, you go to jail. So whoever those people are working 37 and a half hours a week, they're on their way to the clink because you can't do that in France.
I'm glad you pointed it out because I do think that the American, most statistics are the American worker is the most efficient, most productive worker still on the planet. But the American worker is getting squeezed. And as I wrap this up, I'm going to give each of you one last question. Let's start with Tom. What happens in the future? Does the American worker make it through this? Because we have more tax hikes coming through Obamacare.
Well, you know, I'm worried about taxes, but I'm also worried about regulation. And at the Job Creators Alliance, we're looking at all aspects of how do small emerging enterprises begin to create jobs. And to do so, we could talk about taxes, we could talk about simplifying taxes, but we also have to talk about regulation. I mean regulations of all kinds. Sarbanes-Oxley, Dodd-Frank, EPA, OSHA. We really have to talk about getting an environment that does not resemble France in that aspect of business life.
Clint, what about you? You think the American worker, we need a tax cut, or you think the American worker is in for even worse go of it?
I think France is reading the same book we're reading. We're just a couple chapters behind them. As long as you have this unholy marriage of government and unions together, the worker is in a tough spot. It's not the worker versus the worker. It's the government and unions versus government and unions.
Catherine, you get to wrap this all up. You see this getting any better for the American worker?
Well, I am always going to believe in America and the American worker and the American people, and I'm going to remain the optimist that we've got an election coming up in about 2 years, and that maybe we can have a sea change and get some better heads in Washington making some better pro-business, pro-growth decisions, because it's all about growth. It's not about government. It's about allowing businesses to unleash their growth potential and hire employees.
Thank you all for joining us here on Money. You have a good afternoon, good evening. Now call it